Hello beer tubers and welcome to another beer review with me, Peter, the master of hoppets. Today looking at another lager, this time from Mikkeller. Mikkeller has been proclaiming this to be 2020 year of the lager, or trying to make it at least. They've brewed a lot of lagers, they've sold like German lagers and stuff on their web shop. And I thought this one would be fun to give a go because it's like their interpretation of a very classic Danish lager. Well, it's become a classic, I guess. But this is the Mikkeller Iskold Classic Vienna Lager. And I love how on the can it says, when in Denmark, ask for Mikkeller. And then genuine Danish taste. There's a bit of a spin on, classical beers. And even the label here looks a bit like an old style Carlsberg label, a Tuborg, with a circle. And then the original classic beer in Denmark was Tuborg Classic, and it has that round shape, and then here on top, instead of Henry's sitting, it's got like a crown, whatever. I think it's pretty genius marketing, to be honest, because if you quickly just glanced, you could be fooled to think that this was the Carlsberg Classic, but it isn't, and it's different enough to not be something you'd get a lawsuit about, because some breweries rip off just like straight labels from games or video game characters and things like this, and release some more popular characters from comics without thinking that they might, get copyright infringement or something like that. So I think this is very well done. But Iskold Classic. So classic, I've mentioned it a couple of times before. I've done a few reviews of, one at least, of Brewed Classic. Classic is a beer style in Denmark, but it's not really regarded as a beer style in the rest of the world. But what it basically was just a marketing thing from Carlsberg where they wanted to produce something new, and I think it was like 94 they came out with Tuborg Classic, and it was just a lager that was dyed with caramel coloring. And they've later changed, originally this was inspired by Munich Dunkels. It was just a cheap way to make Dunkel beer from what was popular in Denmark and most of Europe in the late 1800s. It was these dark lager beers that were really popular, and that was what people drank. And it was kind of like an interpretation of something along those lines, done macro and cheaper. So caramel coloring instead of using actual Munich malt or whatever. Or Vienna malt, for example, if it's the case of a Vienna lager, which is not as dark as a Munich Dunkel. It's a little bit lighter in color. But you often also get Munich Dunkels of this color too, though. It depends on where in Germany you go, in the brewery, whatever. It's one like Munich Dunkel and Vienna, there's subtle differences. And Vienna lager is often a little bit more hoppy. But the fun thing is that came out in 94, and since then it's become so famous in Denmark. All breweries now do a classic beer of the bigger ones. And when you go outside of Denmark, maybe in Sweden you can find some, but otherwise it's not really a thing. It's just here. And it's funny because a lot of people, they don't know the whole caramel thing. So when you tell them that it's just a Pilsner dyed with caramel, if you buy the macro stuff, they're like, what? But I think it tastes like a dark beer. That's usually what they say. But yeah, caramel also has flavor. So, but I think it's funny, and I think it's one of my least favorite beer styles. I'd much rather have a Pilsner, but a well brewed true Dunkel lager or Vienna lager can be really nice. Not the macro in rendition of classic is not really my thing, but I think it's very fun that they try to do an authentic beer like this and brew an actual classic style. I know there's a few craft breweries that actually brew these as well, Vienna lagers or classic lagers here in Denmark. So you can find them, if you just don't look at macros. A lot of the craft brew ones are made with darker malts. So yeah, Iskold Classic. This holds, how much ABV? 5.6% alcohol, so quite high. A lot higher than the macro versions. They're 4.8, I think. So it'll be fun to try this one. Pours what you'd expect from the style too. It's got a little bit of haze to it. Usually a normal classic is crystal clear. It looks more brown on camera, but it's like a light amber color. I think that's what people would call an amber lager. Beige looking head. They've really been promoting this a lot too. And they're doing so many lagers at the moment. Now, yuzu rice lager, they're doing a lot of macro inspired lagers, but craft. And the thing is, a lot of people, they like, when they pick this up, it's like 40 crowns, and they're like, why should I pay 40 crowns for this when I can buy the cheap macro stuff? Well, because the cheap macro stuff is made with caramel, and this is actually made with whatever malts. It could probably be a little bit cheaper. It's not like the most expensive beer in the world to make, but it's definitely more expensive than the macro stuff. And that's what I don't get. Like, people still like, why drink a craft lager when I could drink a cheap macro lager? Can't you taste the difference? Can't you taste that this beer's not been lagered long? Like, with like proper pilsners versus the craft or macro stuff that's not really lagered and all. But yeah, let's not get into a rant before we tried it. But yeah, you know, it looks nice to stick out the aroma. It smells nice, bready, caramelly toffee. The last craft Vienna lager I had was from Bad Seed Brewing, and that was actually really nice. Yeah, this is. I think that one is a little bit better because I was also a little bit hoppy. But this is a bit, you know, it's caramel, it's toasted nuts, sweet breadiness. I mean, it smells miles, you know, to me ahead of a regular Danish classic because it has like these more fresh, vibrant malt characters. Like freshly baked bread and the doughy kind of breadiness and yeah, like toffee, caramel. Exactly what you think of when you think of these darker lagers. And it should be a bit more refreshing than like a Munich Dunkel too. In terms of hop presence, I'm not getting a lot, but it also smells like it's been lagered for a decent amount of time. Let's give it a taste. Cheers. It tastes a lot like a craft attempt at this, like from many other different breweries in the country. It's got a little bit of a hop bite, like a peppery, hoppy flavor on the aftertaste, much more than, you know, a macro classic. It's nothing like crazy, but it's definitely there. Or Vienna lager. And it's not as like caramelly and toasty and bready as a Munich Dunkel. It's like that in between kind of thing. A little bit more hoppy, and then a little bit more, you know, malty than a Pils. So it's like caramel, toffee, toasty nuttiness, slightly burnt bread kind of flavor, like a burnt breadiness. Maybe they put a touch of like a darker malt in here or something like that. Because Vienna is dark, but not like really dark. So maybe there's a touch of like a caramel malt or something just to provide that slightly kind of burnt bread edge. I guess it also depends on what Vienna malt they're using. It's nice. I'd 10 times rather drink this than, you know, Tuborg Classic. Just because this actually tastes like a well-lagered lager and it has some malt flavor and even some body. It's like a bit slick, it's a bit more chewy, but all these things, like everything is subtle. It's not crazy, over-the-top, extreme craft beer. And I think that's why people have a hard time, you know, enjoying this versus like thinking like, why should I buy this when I can buy a cheap classic? It's because all these small, subtle nuances. I don't think a lot of people think too much about it. Because craft beer is more about like, in your face, in your face, in your face. And that is fun too. But I think stuff like this is, you need room for this too. And I love that they're starting to do this. And I really hope like with their, you know, Mikkeller's size now and everything, they do more classic collabs with classical breweries. Like do a collab with Samuel Smith's or Fuller's or like try to, you know, do classic styles or even like Belgian breweries. But yeah, I think it's a very enjoyable classic. I don't think it's mind-blowing, but, you know, it's very good. I'm not going to go in the 90s just because, for me personally, I'd rather have a Pils. But for a dark lager beer, it's quite nice. Ratings. Or rating. Like an 85, 86. It's a 3.5 on Untapped. It's a very enjoyable, actually brewed classic. And yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's, you know, something like Tuborg Classic might be 2.5, something like that. Maybe 2.25, I guess, on Untapped. This is like miles ahead. But a lot of people, I don't think they think too much of it, like the small nuances and whatnot. And also because it's not really what's popular. That might be it too, you know. People are fed up with drinking stuff like this because this is what they're used to. That might be it too. There's a lot of things. It'd be fun to hear your thoughts on this whole like lager thing and like trying to enjoy more classic beers and not just all this over the top stuff. Because I'm really going back to a lot of classic beer. So if you guys had a chance to try the Mikkeller Iskold Classic Vienna Lager, let me know what you thought of it. As always, remember to comment, subscribe, check out the Facebook fan page and Twitter and Instagram. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and ring the bell for future notifications about videos. And I'm going to say cheers, and see you guys in another beer review.